Welcome to another episode of Live with Kevin. That's one way you could say this, or you could also say, welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, which this eventually will be a part of. So glad that you're here. We had a couple little glitches this morning, but so excited that you're here. I'll introduce my guest to you in a second. But before we do that, if you're with us live, I want you to say hello. And the best way to do that is to go into the comments in whatever social platform you're in right now and just say hello. Well, type hello and tell us where you're located. If you'll do that, that'd be great. I'll know where you're at. Others in the group will know where you're at. My guest will know where you are. And it'll get you used to using your fingers, which means if during this conversation you have a question, a comment, or an idea, you should share it. Just like you would if you were around an actual table with my guest and I. If you had a comment, a question, or an idea, and you'd offer it, right? So do it here as well. It'll make this a better conversation. It'll make us more useful for you. And ultimately, it will make it a better podcast episode. So that's what I want you to do. Imagine you're joining us for a cup of coffee and engage with us. If you'll do that, everybody wins. And with that, I'm going to do a countdown for the podcast. Marissa, this is for you in 3, 2, 1. Motivation is something that every leader thinks about. Unfortunately, often in the context of a person they see as unmotivated. Our guest today would disagree with that perspective. We're going to talk today about how to motivate the unmotivated, as promised in the title, with a proven and perhaps in some cases contrarian view. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders like you grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast, you could join us in the future live to learn more about how to do that. You can join our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, just two of the places where we live stream these episodes first. You can just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to get all the scoop and to know when we'll be live. My guest today, let me bring him in and let me get my notes back up here, is Matt Granados. He is the founder and CEO of Life Pulse International, which helps organizations fix people problems by solving process problems once and for all. He's the author of, among other things, Motivate the Unmotivated, and he has a proven system for sustainable motivation with an unconventional approach. So, Matt, welcome. Glad that you're here, sir. Thanks.
Appreciate to be here. Always an honor to share what we're finding is working.
All right. Well, and that's what we all want to do, is find out what's working. So let's start there. If we're going to talk about, if the title of this is the title of the book, Motivate the Unmotivated, what's the big idea about motivating the unmotivated?
The big idea is that motivation is not a character trait, it's a state of mind. And when we recognize that, we can change it. So the biggest issue we find is the main character of the book is his name's Unmo, or her name's Unmo. And Unmo is this distant cousin, if you see in the book, of a specific character that I don't think I have the right to necessarily say, if that makes sense, but is just not the most motivated individual in the world. In fact, is the most unmotivated. And we ask the readers as they come through the book is to go through the book for yourself, and then also go through your book as you're working through it with Unmo in your mind. So the big idea is the fact that motivation is not a character trait; it is a state of mind. And if it's a state of mind, I can help influence it of somebody else's. I can't create motivation, but man, there's a lot I can do to influence it and make sure they're doing what they should be doing. And the entire book walks you through not only what to do, but more importantly, how to actually do it in whatever situation you're in, for yourself, for them, using the system, and get the results you want.
And we're going to talk about all those four things that you just sort of slid past everybody in a second. But early in the book, you talk about, and what you've already said hints at this, but you say that there are two motivation myths. So let's talk about the myths, because when I read them, I started to smile because, you hear them all the time. And we take them to be true. They're really not. So talk about what they are and what the truth really is.
Well, there's multiple myths when it comes, right? So the first myth, and again, if there's a different one you're talking about in the book, because we address a couple of them, is the myth that you can't motivate others, right? Like you can't motivate others. And I think you can sit there and recognize that motivation is something that is from within, right? So yes, I can't motivate others, but I can help influence it. It's like what we just said, and making sure that we are navigating that. Another myth that we focus on is the fact that I don't have time. Like, I don't have time to motivate them. And what I tell people is you do have time. You either spend it up front or you spend it forever. The way I relate this to is if you look at the average age of a person still living at home, it's way higher than 18 right now. So if you're listening and you have a adult child at home, this is not to offend you, but it's just the reality of it. You either fix a problem in the beginning or you fix it forever. And it's the same exact concept. So those would be the top two that I'm finding right now that are most prevalent in the world is I don't have time to deal with this. I'm telling you, you're going to invest. You either invest up front or forever. It's your pick.
So one of the things that people will talk about when they talk about motivation, and you just talked about internal motivation. So there's internal motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. So what do we need to know about those, the difference between those two and how those two impact our ability to help change the state of mind of others?
Yeah. So extrinsic is usually based on something coming from the outside. Pushing in is how I describe it, right? So that's going to be like something either pushing or pulling them from the outside. Intrinsic is just like what you said, Kevin, is the internal dialogue that kind of gets their head moving. There's actually a third level of motivation that Daniel Pink writes about called pro-social, which is actually, I find from a corporation perspective, when I work with teams and leadership team and companies in our optimization overhaul, we focus on pro-social and we lean on pro-social. Quick explanation of pro-social is the fact that I don't want to be a part of a reason why the team doesn't get where they are going. We don't want to be that person. Humans naturally don't. So intrinsic, extrinsic, and pro-social, I can help with the extrinsic, but I also found I can coach effectively to help guide people through the intrinsic as well. And it's about asking questions, getting to know the individual, tying what we call it a PVTT, which is personal value tied to task. And that is all about focusing on the two different types of motivation, right? There's motivating out of love-based motivation, which is based on understanding. And then there's fear-based motivation, which is based on force. I guarantee you with the leaders who are listening to this, y'all have experienced and likely have used yourself fear-based motivation. However, you probably haven't really leaned on the love-based motivation. One of the myths about motivation is which one takes longer. The average person would say fear-based motivation is the faster and takes less time. But don't confuse faster with takes less time. Love-based motivation is sustainable. The way we do this, we describe the motivational all-stars in the book. Just to name some of them, you got Martin Luther King Jr., you got Gandhi, you got Jesus, you got Mother Teresa, Princess Diana. You go through these people who have done amazing things in the world. And I'm not saying that they're perfect, but they've done amazing things in the world. When they were removed from this place, when they were removed from their position of power, what happened to their movement? It exploded. In fact, when you go to some of the dictators, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, what happened when they were removed? Their power actually diminished. The movement stopped. So which takes longer? No question, fear-based motivation, because you have to constantly be pushing that extrinsic versus the love-based motivation. When you use the 5 pillars of motivation, love-based motivation takes less time and is more effective long-term.
We frame that dichotomy, if you will, around the idea of the difference between leading for compliance and leading for commitment, right?
Yeah.
And you can hook those two things to what you just said for sure. And I think if, I'm old, I'm pretty clear that I'm older than you. I've read your book. I'm looking at you. It's pretty clear that I'm older than you. But even, however old you are, Matt, I think it's true. And I think anyone who's listening would say that historically, more of us had experience with leaders who were leading from that fear or force side rather than the love side. And so I will just say lovingly, just because that's what you've experienced doesn't mean that's the only option we've got, right?
And in fact, I don't go based off what we experienced. I go based off the fruit of what comes of it. How's it work? It doesn't work. Are you still motivated by that individual who yelled at you 30 years ago? No, but you don't forget it. you're impacted by it. And when you're in the worst version of yourself because you don't have good systems, you move yourself back into that role. What we talk about is there's different types of management and leadership that has been told to us over the last probably 2025 right now, almost 50 years, we would say, probably closer to 75 years, right? Let's get back to the 1950s. The 1950s was basically, I call it the drill sergeant, right? And that's what we're talking about, Kevin. Just don't get me wrong.
Yep.
Doesn't mean the drill sergeant died in 1950. It just, that was the most prevalent way of managing people back then. Then it swung into the 60s to what we call the cheerleader. Then it swung the pendulum back. The cheerleader basically just cheers you on and nothing ever happens, right? Kind of, hey, we love you. We're going to be nice to you. And we're going to pretend everything's okay. But then it swung back all the way over to what I call the teacher. And we sat there in the self-growth era, the 1970s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, all the way through right now. And people are still stuck as teachers. We are not called to be teachers because all you're doing is presenting knowledge. I don't have my phone on me, which is amazing, right? But
it's a good thing, actually.
I know, right? I'm like, where is it? I'm missing something. But we have access to knowledge unlike we've ever had before. So it's not about knowledge. It's about how do you properly apply the knowledge, right? We define wisdom as using the correct knowledge in the correct way at the correct time. What we want our leaders to be when we bring them through, whether we're coaching an individual, a team, or an entire organization, is we want you to be architects. Because what do architects do? Architects come in, they use the natural laws of science. We use the natural laws of the universe, of success, of people. And they use the natural laws to go, okay, here's how we will build what you're saying you want to build. And then we present it back to the individual to then go build it. That's the difference. And we could talk about where we learned that, how we were out in, Silicon Valley working with a pretty good client that searches really well, and how we came to realize, holy smokes, the entire leadership and culture teaching is completely backwards. And that's why a lot of people get a little concerned when they start investigating how we do what we do until they see the results that are sustainable within the organization.
Well, we could have a long conversation about the other piece of that. We promote people who were really good at their job, really good at the technical or subject matter expertise. And so they've been rewarded for having that knowledge. And so being able to, willing to impart it seems to be the natural outcome or next step. And it's hard for us to let go of that so we can focus on things like processor systems, which we're going to get to in a sec. You talk about in your work, in the book, about a motivation formula. I'm going to put it up on the screen for those that are watching, but you can walk through it briefly. And then we'll unpack it a little. Obviously, we don't have the time to unpack it the way we could if we had longer. But talk to us about the formula a little bit, because I think it will help people see where your approach is a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. So this all came from a time, and I think I talked about it in the very beginning of the book, where a family member of mine, I was sitting there going, why are they not as motivated as I feel I am? Like, why, if motivation is a choice, not a condition, if it's a choice, why do people I care about choose to not be motivated? Now, I wasn't saying this in a way of like, look at me, I'm motivated. It was just, why aren't they doing it? And I came to realize that I don't really know why they're not. I don't know why Unmo is not doing what they should be doing. And I started sitting there going, so what's the structure? What's the formula of this? And what we found is you need these variables understood. So you and them, those are what we call the motivational parties. There's a motivator and a word I made up called the motivatee, right? Like this is the individual being motivated by the motivator, just like a mentor and a mentee. So not real words. So if you're like looking them up, we did make those words up. But the concept.
But here's the thing. They're not real words, but they're understandable words. So
exactly. That's what we're trying to teach here. So you are the motivator. They is the motivatee. But sometimes you're both. Sometimes you have to use this system on yourself, right? So you got to know you got to know them. The combination of that is what's going to give you a positive or a negative. And this is really important. Because then you go and get a system, and the system only multiplies what you put into it. So if you don't know yourself, which most people don't, actually Harvard did a big study that said that 95% of people say they're self-aware. It turns out 10 to 14% are, which means if you're sitting there thinking, wow, those people are really unaware, you're part of the 85% that's the problem. Like, we don't know what we don't know. So how well do you know you? How well do you know them? Take the time to ask the right questions. There's 3 questions we suggest people ask to get that information. And if that is a negative, meaning I don't know them, I think I know me. So that gets me, let's just say, at a -2 or a 3 on our scale. I don't care how good the system is. You times anything by a negative, you get a negative result.
Right.
You have great people with a bad system. I don't care how good the people are, you're going to get a negative result. You need positive variables in these 3 areas. So, how well do you know you? Self-awareness, self-analysis, all that stuff. How well do you know them? Through questions, caring, understanding, and then you times that by whatever system of operation you're using. If you are not using a system of operation that you can clearly articulate, you are part of what we call the inefficiency epidemic that we are currently in. And it comes from 2 things. It comes from individuals who don't do what they're supposed to do and who don't understand what's supposed to happen, but it also comes from people watching this podcast. All right. So I'm going to insult some of you, but it's only because I love you. What that means is you are a high capacity leader who has not taken the time to systemize how you do what you do. So you can come in and you could do a week's worth of work in an hour, but your people can't. And then you wonder why they can't do what you want them to do. They don't know how. They're not equipped to. So that's how we work on this. What's the operating system? Who are they? Who are you? You bring all those together and boom, you will have predictable results in what you're going to get almost every single time.
Let's talk about those 3 questions that you hinted at, and people who are really paying attention were like, wait a minute, there are 3 questions? What are the 3 questions? So you talk about the 3 questions that can really help us better understand other folks.
Yeah.
What would you suggest those are?
Yeah. So every single week we ask this of our team. It's in our little planning system that we have right over here on this shoulder. If you're watching it, if you're listening to it, it's a blue book, right? That's all it is. But the inside of it has these 9 questions we bring everybody through. The first 3 questions are these 3 questions. What are you focused on? What are you grateful for? What are you working towards? What are you focused on? What are you working for? Or what are you grateful for? What are you working towards? Now, we ask these 3 questions every single week. Our teams come prepared to what we call our pulse check meeting. Our teams come prepared to explain that to us. Now, they don't need to go into details. It's one word, one focus. What am I working towards? They don't need to explain it. They just go through it. So we can get through a team of 10 in about 5 to 6 minutes. Does that make sense? Like, it's not a conversation.
Not the first time you did it.
No.
But now.
Yeah.
Because we have a process, right?
Exactly. And it's just, hey, just dump it out. And here's what I'm listening for as a leader: patterns, trends. Okay, you're grateful for this, and you said this. If their one word focus is marriage and they're getting married this weekend, that's a good thing. If it's marriage and they've been married for 20 years, you might want to check in on that. Does that make sense? Like, and
it could be a joyful time, but I understand. But
I agree.
But I certainly understand your point, because it's a clue. It's
a live example, 2 live examples of how this works so well to motivate the unmotivated. And it works with your kids. It works with your spouse. It works with your pets. They don't talk back, but the same things we do goes all the way down to animals. We get down to the natural desire of animals. With that being said, one of my employees, their word was cancer. And I was about to actually let her go. I was ready to fire her. I was like, man, she's just not as chipper as she should be. She leaves Fridays early, Mondays. She kind of is like, she needs to be a little more excited. I just don't think she's a good fit right now. And then she happens to share her one word focus as cancer. And I looked at her. I said, hey, like, what's that about? I know, like, that's a weird thing for you to say. And she's like, well, I didn't want to tell anybody, but I'm just finally done. For the last probably 4 months, I've left on, or 4 weeks, I'm sorry. I've left on Friday to go get chemo treatment because I'm fighting cancer, but I didn't want to bring the team down. So I didn't tell anybody. And then I come Monday and I just always wanted to apologize, but I didn't want to bring up the cancer thing. So she was literally, for the betterment of the team, not telling anyone she was fighting cancer, going to get chemo on the weekends. And I almost fired her because of it. That's how ignorant I was to this. Another one of our warehouse managers in one of our other companies, he was always grateful for his daughters. He was always grateful for his kids. So anytime there was a late shipment post 5 o'clock, because I knew he loved being home for dinner. He loved being home with his kids. His wife was actually the breadwinner. He was just kind of doing what he needs to do just to stay busy during the day, and he would take care of the kids. So normally the warehouse manager, if there's a late delivery, they would stay after. One of our other employees liked getting overtime. So instead of pulling from that withdrawal from my warehouse manager, who worldly or traditionally, they'd be the one who comes to stay after, I was able to let him leave, which he was so grateful for, and have someone else come in. When you ask these questions, what are you grateful for? What are you working towards? And what are you focused on? you were able to understand who that person is in about 4 cycles of asking that question, if you're listening effectively.
Another thing, and I think there's a connection here. You talk about motivation catalysts,
Mm-hmm.
and as I'm listening to you expand on those questions, it helps me think and connect to those catalysts. So why don't you talk about those? Because again, these apply to us, obviously, as humans, as well as those that we are leading, influencing, wanting to help motivate. So let's just talk about those for a sec.
Yeah. All right. So there's 4 catalysts. So what is a catalyst? Catalyst is something that sparks a reaction, right? In science, that's what that word comes from. So that's how we came up with these concepts. But motivational catalyst, motivation is kind of like a pilot light in a house, right? And if you ever seen what a pilot is, it's a little flame that stays on all the time and it keeps your whole house warmed. And it's like fire. Fire, when managed properly, is extremely effective and can save your life. But if it's mismanaged, it will blow up your house. The pilot light's the same way. It is an open flame with gas going in it at all times. So how do we create the spark that gets that pilot light lit and then nurture it effectively as a leader? Well, it's with these 4 motivational catalysts. If you go to lifepulseinc.com/MCA, you can actually take a free assessment to figure out what your catalyst is. But there's 4 outcomes. There's freedom, acknowledgement, connectivity, and support, right? Freedom, acknowledgement, connectivity, and support. I've always wanted to create like a cool acronym. If anyone thinks of one that makes sense, please let me know. But I don't have one. I like acronyms. I don't have one for this. So we'll start with support, right? Because that's on the screen. Or you could do freedom, whichever one you want, so people can understand.
I'll go to freedom. That's the first one. Let's go to freedom.
Let's go. All right, freedom, right? Freedom is individuals, and we'll just talk work so you understand the concept of it, who don't necessarily care about what you're doing for your company. They just don't care. I know you want your people to have the same passion about what you're doing as you do, but it's not a requirement to be a good employee. And it's not a requirement to be good with your culture. You don't have to have, you need to bleed you don't need to bleed LP blue in order to be a good employee here. But you do need to do the job that we said you were going to do. And I think those lines get a little too blurry. And that's why we run into these managerial and leadership issues, is because we're trying to do things that we are not supposed to do in the role that we're in. We're not a therapist. That's not our job, but yet we tend to be one. We're not a babysitter. And if you're babysitting, trust me, you're not managing. So we have to come to terms with this. So sorry, I got distracted, but that's just a passionate, burning issue I have when I work with clients, is stop babying your people, lead them. So freedom. Freedom comes from individuals who would rather go do something else. So the way you want to motivate a freedom catalyst individual is you want to make sure you're helping them do more of what they like to do outside of work. You're pointing back the fact that by doing what you're doing here, you get to go on hikes the way you like to do. You get to go to the gym the way you like to do. You get to buy the nice paints when you like to go paint. You get to go to those concerts. But we got to get the job done here so you can go do what you're going to do over there. The way you pull away from a freedom person is make them work extra hours unnecessarily. Make them miss things that are meaningful to them. Well, man, come on. That's your kids, second grade rehearsal. Like, they all make random noises. It doesn't actually work. Yes, but for a freedom person, you just pulled a withdrawal that you'll never get back.
Right.
Now, this doesn't mean you cater and you cave to your people. There are times where I will go to a freedom person and I'll say, hey, heads up. I know you really want to go, but we need X, Y, and Z. So if you can find a way to do it and still go, I'm all game. But that can't be an excuse why job A, B, or C does not get done. And I know the withdrawal I'm pulling. I think that's what a lot of leaders do wrong, is they don't realize the withdrawal they're pulling. They don't realize how heavy that ask is, how expensive that ask is.
To that person. Wouldn't be heavy to me.
Absolutely.
It's not heavy to them. That's the big key, right?
Right. For me, freedom, not that it means nothing to me. Freedom in the grand scheme of things means a lot to me, but freedom in the sense of where I work, because I genuinely love what I do. The next one is where I fall. That's acknowledgement, right? Freedom, acknowledgement. You give me an attaboy, I'm running through a wall. You criticize me, that's heavy. Now, does that mean I can't take criticism or you shouldn't correct me? No, but you just need to know what you're dealing with when that happens. So someone with acknowledgement, make sure you're using positive affirmations. Make sure you're praising them in public and correcting them in private, right? You want to make sure you're focusing on the fact that words are heavy for this person. So be very careful. The acknowledgement person, they're the ones that win Employee of the Month all the time. The freedom people, they're sitting there going, why do they even care? It's just two totally different desires from these individuals. After acknowledgement, and again, that's what I said, to increase acknowledgement, that motivation, praise. To decrease it or create what we call motivational walls, negatively impact them in front of people, scold them in front of people, use your words to pin them down, and you will break them very, very quickly. Next one, freedom, acknowledgement, and then connectivity is probably the next one you have in that order, right? It's cool. So connectivity, this is a little bit of that pro-social concept that we talked about earlier. Connectivity is the fact that they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. These are the individuals, and you're like, which nonprofit? Oh, here's the Humane Society, and they're the ones that show up and they go buy all the dogs. Like they want to do something bigger. A lot of people are tied to a cause right now because of the way the world has told them to be. So, for example, connectivity. We have a foundation that's called the Take Part Foundation. It raises money for rare pediatric conditions. We have a daughter with a rare pediatric condition in a wheelchair, and there's no funding. So we started this. If I'm a connectivity person and we are trying to raise money for through our company or some type of random fundraising or something, I want to know, where do my people care? I'm not a connectivity person. So I would rather you say, hey, Matt, great job on what you're doing with that foundation. Like that is really powerful what you're doing with Take Part. But I don't need you to raise money for Take Part. Does that make sense? Like, that doesn't excite me as much as the recognition. Now, please understand, I'm not sitting there going, feed people's egos. Like, we need to put people's egos in the jail they belong and shut that door and lock it. I'm all for that. But this just goes back to recognizing where it is. Connectivity, to increase it, big picture thinking. Look at all the impact we're making. Decreasing it is minimize the external impact. Hey, why do you worry about all those things? They don't do anything for you. When you say that to someone who's a connectivity, what you're doing does nothing for you, they're not doing it for themselves. They gain value as they offer value elsewhere. So that's connectivity. And then support. Support is the last one. Doesn't mean it's any more or less valuable. It just happens to be the way the order came to. And support are individuals who want to be part of a team. And what they want to know, Kevin, is I want to know, if I'm working late, you're working late. What they don't like is that their boss checks out early every single day. What they don't like is the fact that they're sitting there and there's a project due and no one else is there with them. So what that means, that does not mean you need to be artificially being there first in, last out, the way old school kind of management needs to be. I think that's a foolish and an artificial way of motivating people. If you happen to do it, great, but don't do it for that cause. It doesn't actually work. What they want to know is that you actually care. Support people want to know the other people on the team care as much as they do. So when you are able to articulate that and let them know that, they will run through the wall for you. Support people want to know their actions are making impact, that they're appreciated. Different than acknowledgement. Does that make sense? Acknowledgement is good job. Appreciation is thank you for doing what you've done. Slight difference, goes a mile in different directions.
Yeah, big difference in the end.
Yeah.
I wanted to have, we get pitched stuff all the time. Your team pitched this book, and I wanted to talk about the things we've been talking about. And so I'm so glad that we've done that. And there's so much more we could talk about. But before we go, there's really a couple of more things I want to ask you quickly. And one of them is this: someone out there who's listening is thinking about, okay, motivation, how is that different, or how do I need to distinguish that from manipulation?
Yeah.
Like, we need to talk about that flip side of this coin just for a second, because if we don't, someone will be wishing we had.
Yeah. So motivation versus manipulation. And we have an entire chapter in the book that counters these. It's all about alignment. So we have an event that we do January 22nd, 23rd of 2026 in St. Louis. It's called Realign, where we bring in top performers and we help them realign everything they're doing to realize that high performance is not a peak you hit, it's a ceiling you've hit. And there's a whole nother level that we teach all of our clients, which is called optimal performance, but it's all about alignment. Manipulation happens when you're not in proper alignment with each other. What I mean by that is it's all about motive. It's all about motive. It's not actually about impact. It is about intent at this point. Now, the fruit of what you do is where we'll focus on, hey, bozo, that was a bad idea. But for right now, when it comes to this, are you manipulating or are you enlightening? And what it means is when you are motivating ethically, it's not about changing what you're doing, because you can do it unethically and ethically using the same tools that we taught. Like this is like, that's the dangerous part of it. Is it a win-win or a win-lose? Is it a symbiotic relationship or a parasitic relationship? And most of the times it's a parasitic. Most of the times you're trying to get something from them. That's the reason I asked the 3 questions. What are you focused on? What are you grateful for? What are you working towards? So that as I'm trying to get what we need, I'm trying to make it so it will help them get what they need. I'm tying everything back to that PVTT. It's personal value tied to task, so that you as the individual that we are working with, trying to help encourage and build up those catalysts of motivation, that pilot light, getting everything in the way. I know me, I know you, which is the them. We have a system to do this, and we're going to get the results that we want. So manipulation.
That we want, right?
Yes.
That's where the getting the intent in alignment is so important. I just appreciate. Anytime I'm talking, with a group of leaders and motivation comes up, I'm glad that you had it in the book. I'm glad we took a second to chat about it.
Absolutely.
I want you to take. I know that you could take a long time on this last thing I want to ask you, but we don't have a lot of time. So, but you decided you wanted to test all this stuff out in the real world, and so you started with Craigslist.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, tell us the high level version of this story, because I think it will help bring us full circle.
Yeah. So the highest level is we had individuals we hired off Craigslist to build about a $40 million sales organization over the lifetime. And these individuals barely graduated high school. So when they came to work with us, I realized they had work ethic that I've never seen before. They had a willingness to do hard things that were counter to anything I ever grew up with. The problem was they just didn't know what to do. Like they didn't have a plan on how to do it. So when I started this accidentally, we brought it into our team and started giving it to the reps, the sales reps, and these individuals took their life to a whole new level in a way that I could not imagine. That's how it all started. And now what we do to still do that, Kevin, because I think honestly, if I'm talking and I'm not doing what it is we're teaching, I need to stop, is we do what we call PPS. They're precision pulse sessions, where we come in virtually or in person and you do a survey, and we do this with a whole crowd of a keynote of 100 people, but usually it's a small leadership team or something of that nature. They tell us what their PPGs are, personnel performance gaps, what are the problems they're dealing with in their life, personally and professionally. And then we are put to the test of how would our system solve it. Then we come and present it to them. It's one of my favorite things to do because it keeps us on our toes and it forces us to go, hey, our systems work. They're industry agnostic. It doesn't matter about how bad your situation is. We can help fix it. And that's one of our favorite things to continue to do. So it started with, our employees we hired off Craigslist, and now it's working with leadership team, business mastermind teams, and organizations all over the world where we can come in 60 minutes and answer their main problems, give them solutions to go run with and be on their way.
So I have 3 more questions for you.
Okay.
One of which one of which you hope I'm going to ask.
Okay.
But here's the first one. What do you do for fun?
Oh, is that the one that I hope you're going to ask? Yeah, I feel one of the things we teach is the difference between your identity, your calling, your assignment, right? And understanding the concept of purpose, which has been kind of bastardized, I think, in the fact all throughout self-growth world. So I love living out my calling. That's fun for me. The way I do that is by serving and giving back. And this is not this is not like one of those like, hey, what's your biggest weakness in an interview? Well, my biggest weakness is I'm the hardest worker. No, I genuinely enjoy going around and helping people grow. Hence what I do for a living, right? Like this is what we do for a living, but we do a lot of work in our church. I run the men's discipleship program or men's ministry up at our church. So that's actually the fun for me. I've tried the golf thing. I like being with people. It's just not fun for me. I've tried hobbies. I'm okay with it. It's just not fun for me. My hobby is something like snowboarding, where I can go and be there kind of consciously, let myself kind of drift and let my subconscious mind kind of take on. And things like that is what I do for fun. I also love being a dad. I love being a husband. I love being with my kids. Like life is fun. It's hard, but it's really fun when you're in alignment and obedience with your calling, your identity, and doing the assignments that are put in front of you. So I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe I'm boring.
The only person that can answer that question is you. And I wanted to know, what are you reading these days? This one you knew I was going to ask. What are you reading these days?
So obviously, from just the faith perspective, the Bible's an everyday thing for me. It has been for years and it always will be. But outside of the Bible, the book that I'm actually back into is The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. I'm a traditionalist. I don't know if you guys have realized it, but they kind of just recycle the same foundational truths. And I found that in those books that I've read, all growing up from Think and Grow Rich to I haven't been able to implement 5% of what's in those books. So to sit there and go get a new cool idea, we run into this all the time with our staff. Like, hey, I went to a new conference. Now we were going to do this. Hey, I went to a conference. Now we're going to do this. Like it's a disaster continuing to happen, not waiting to happen, continuing to happen. So book I'm reading right now, Chet Holmes, Ultimate Sales Machine. The biggest takeaway from that is the fact that it's not hard to build systems. It's hard to follow through with them. And that's the reason why we're reading it, to work through something with a client as well.
Yeah, it's all about implementation, which I have a question I'm going to ask everybody else in a second. But Matt, here's the one you wanted me to ask.
Okay.
Where do you want to point people? How can they learn more? I think you've got a gift for folks. Like, where do you want to point people before we say goodbye?
All right, give me the 3 initials of this podcast, the initials of the podcast, and I'll tell you what we'll do.
The Remarkable Leadership Podcast. So how about the T?
TRLP, right? TRLP. What we'll do is we'll put up a page, lifepulseinc.com, and I'm going to write that down, /TRLP. And I will put any of the tools that we've talked about. I'll give access to any of the listeners that they want. And they can go on to it by the time this is posted. If you're watching this live, don't go to that URL. It does not exist yet. But we will have it up live and let them know how they can get a hold of us. We have, like I said, a special event for top performers, Realign. That is January 22nd, 23rd in St. Louis. By the time you're listening to this, if you have, if there's still room, grab a spot. That's realignstl.com, and follow us on social, right? At lifepulseinc.com or at lifepulseinc, you'll see there our website, and reach out with whatever you need. We love doing what we call gap audits, which you tell us what your problems are. We will create a free blueprint on how you can fix them, and you could take that and run with it. You don't need to ever work with us, because our goal is not to keep people sick. It's to bring them to where they need to go. So because of that, we graduate people out of our program in 6 to 9 months. Beautiful.
So Matt, before I say goodbye to you, I need to ask a question of everyone else. And it is the question of implementation. Mm-hmm. It's the question I ask you all every single week. It's simply this: now what? Mm-hmm. Now that you've spent 35 minutes or so with Matt and I, what are you going to do? What action will you take as a result? Because if you don't take an action, sort of what's the point? Having the ideas, awesome. Taking action on them is where something changes. And so I challenge you to think about that. I challenge you and encourage you to think about what action you will take, whether that is, and including learning more about lifepulseinc.com or going to lifepulseinc.com/TRLP to get your free gifts. And as long as you're clicking on links, you might as well go to kevinikenberry.com/flexible to make sure you learn more about our latest book, Flexible Leadership. All of those are things that you can do in order to move closer to where you are trying to go. And that's what we're trying to do here on this podcast every week. Matt, thanks so much for being here. It was a pleasure to spend some time with you, to learn from you and with you. And so thanks again for your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Kevin.
Everybody, that's it for this week's episode, but we'll be back next week. If this is your first time, now you know. If you've been here before, you'll be back, and make sure you're subscribed. So wherever you're watching this or listening, you're subscribed so you don't miss any future episodes of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.